our new theme this month is Light Show. Let the Christmas celebration begin. God gave us the greatest gift when he gave us Jesus, and we can celebrate all year long when we remember what God has done for us. So, all this month, we're going to be in the New Testament of our Bible, specifically in the Gospels. The Gospel stories tell about the birth, life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Since it is Christmas, we're really focusing on his birth. So much of what we know about Jesus' birth we know from the stories in the Gospel. Our story today starts in the hill country of Judah with a couple. Maybe you've heard of them. Their names are Elizabeth and Zechariah. Now, there are a few important details that you need to know about these two. First, Zechariah was an Israelite priest. This was a very high honor. Both he and Elizabeth were from the priestly line of Aaron. That was a big deal. Not only did Zechariah have a big title, and they both had an important family line, but they also both followed God with their whole hearts. They obeyed God's commands and did what was right. So you might expect that an important and faithful couple like this would experience a lot of blessings and be the envy of all of those around them, right? But check this out. They had no children because Elizabeth was not able to have any, and they were both very old. Elizabeth and Zechariah were unable to have children. And in their culture, many other people would have thought this was because they had done something wrong and that maybe God was punishing them. Unfortunately, that's just how many people thought about things like this back then. For Elizabeth, especially, it was a source of great shame in her life. And it sure was looking like the time had passed for this older couple to have children. Well, as a priest, Zechariah had certain responsibilities from time to time, and the greatest of those took place at the temple in Jerusalem. The priests were on sort of a rotation to serve in the temple, and as there were prayers to be offered, sacrifices to be made, and so on. While this group of priests was on duty, Zechariah was chosen to burn incense inside the temple, a huge once-in-a-lifetime honor. So Zechariah headed into the temple while the rest gathered outside to worship. But Zechariah's extraordinary day was about to get even more extraordinary. Look at this. Then an angel of the Lord appeared to Zechariah. The angel was standing at the right side of the incense altar. When Zechariah saw him, he was amazed and terrified. Can you imagine? Zechariah was inside the holy place of the temple for the first and only time in his life, when all of a sudden, an angel appeared. Check out what the angel said to Zechariah. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will have a child. It will be a boy, and you must call him John." The angel had come to answer their prayers. They had been praying for the impossible, a child, even though Elizabeth couldn't have one and they were older. But they would soon find that nothing is impossible with God. And Zechariah was about to find out the important role that this special child would play. So the angel continued, "He will bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will prepare the way for the Lord." In a powerful and important way, God would use Elizabeth and Zechariah's child to bring the people back to God, but also to prepare the way for God's promised Savior to come. More on that in a moment. But first, let's check back with Zechariah. He was not sure how this was all going to work out. He wanted proof. And the proof he got was not exactly what he was asking for. The angel said to him, "I am Gabriel. I serve God. I've been sent to speak to you and to tell you this good news. And now you will have to be silent. You will not be able to speak until after John is born. That's because you did not believe my words. They will come true at the time God has chosen." Now, meanwhile, all the people were still outside of the temple waiting for Zechariah. What was taking so long? When he came out, he couldn't speak to them. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple, and they knew this was because he kept gesturing to them. He still couldn't speak. Sure enough, it wasn't long after that Elizabeth became pregnant, and she declared, "The Lord has done this for me," she said. "In these days he has been kind to me. He has taken away my shame among the people." 8 days after the child was born, family and friends gathered around to celebrate. Zechariah gave him the name John, just as the angel Gabriel had instructed, and everyone looked with wonder. Right away, Zechariah could speak again. Right away, he praised God, and all of his neighbors were filled with fear and wonder. Throughout Judea's hill country, people were talking about all of these things. Everyone who heard this wondered about it. And because the Lord was with John, they asked, "What is this child going to be?" What seemed impossible had become possible. God had given Zechariah and Elizabeth a child in their old age. God had stopped Zechariah's speech and returned it. And when John grew older, he would play a really important role in introducing his cousin, Jesus, to the world. It's easy to place limits on what God can do. When something seems impossible for us, we might just simply believe that it must also be impossible for God. But if this story teaches us anything, it reminds us that what seems impossible for us is in fact not impossible for God. By the end of the story, family and friends were gathered around with Elizabeth and Zechariah, celebrating what God had done, what only God could do. I'm sure 9 months earlier, they would have never imagined being there. So think about some of the impossible situations you're facing right now. Maybe you're really struggling in school and feeling really discouraged about it. Or maybe there are troubles at home and you don't see a way that they'll ever get fixed. Maybe you're not getting along with a friend and things are just really tense right now. These are real situations and they can feel impossible and out of our hands. But remember, you can bring these things before God. It doesn't mean that they will always work out exactly the way you want them to, but we also might be surprised by the way that God shows up. It probably won't be an angel dropping in on you like Zechariah, but it may surprise you nonetheless. And who knows, maybe even leave you speechless. So today, as we close it all up, I want you to think about this question.
Reveal the question.
What are some things you celebrate? In other words, when you look back over this last month or even year, where can you see that God has been working in a way that only God can? And how can you celebrate that God can do anything? If you're having trouble coming up with something, ask your parents or someone at your church. They can help you see what God has been doing in your life.